on Mass Creation Broadcast. Today we'll be doing a liberal lookout. I want to be responding to Hippy Dippy channel debate with Dylan Burns, hosted by Dylan Burns, and guests this time being Brent, CTV, Heemed, also known as Heem, Spartacus, Joe Lewis, Kevin Castley, Trihex, and Vosh. And the opening talk will be about Hassan Spiker new house. I'll be doing a reaction to what's been going on in the stream. Hold up, let me set up the window and oh right, I forgot that okay, now it's visible. I hope everyone will hear well. The introductions were done at our 2 and 25 minutes, and the rules were presented before that. So if you want to see from the very start, go to our 2:20 of this stream. I'll be posting it in the chat. Hold up. I'm starting right away. Chat. And hold up. If anyone is watching, this is the stream I'm responding to. I posted it in the chat. Everything was sent. Perfect. Alright, let's get going.
Now, of course, I will not...
Alright, I'll be playing at 125 speed, so if you want to see at normal speed, just search for the stream yourself. I posted the link. I'll post it in the description of the YouTube. I don't plan on being here much more than an hour, possibly tops an hour and a half. So let's get going.
legislate your niceness, but I will say that always be nice, make sugar your favorite spice. Good luck. Now we're gonna go in the first topic, and the first topic has to do with Hassan's new house. Never has there been so much dialogue about a streamer buying a home, but there has been a lot of dialogue on whether Hassan buying his new, very nice home is hypocritical at all, since he is also a socialist, a pretty avid, outspoken socialist.
Okay, since yeah, I'll be doing commentary on this stream. Yeah, so I certainly agree what Hassan's principles are and what he did are in conflict with each other. So yeah, I'd say that overall Hassan is hypocritical, but also Hassan is not a very high tier dude. It isn't someone who you would have expected to be principled. If you've been following him since the day on TYT and such, she's just, part of it is shock value, part of it is just his ego and stuff like this. So yeah, him buying a multi-million-dollar home, even though in the stream is said as well that inside it's not incredibly impressive, he's still it's no wonder that it didn't have a good look. Okay.
That's all the background I think anybody needs to have. I think we all know the topic in question. So we're going to, as always, we're going to go from the top left-hand corner. We're going to start with Brant.
Well, first off, it's always great to be successful, and I'm never going to hate on anyone for doing the grind, spending the time, putting the time and the effort in. That being said, when it's in complete juxtaposed to what your platform that you've built up and the community that you've built up, as far as consistency, I feel like it kind of goes against what you've been preaching. It's kind of like a practice first what you preach. But like I said, I would never hate on anybody for being successful. And, you know, my hat goes off to him. Good job, Hassan. Keep it up. But other than that, like, as far as your...
Yeah, I'd like to say a point. He's right about it. Him being successful in itself isn't a bad thing. I mean, you can be a successful socialist in a capitalist system. When it comes to Hassan, though, if you've been following him, there is a recent story at Every Frame of Pause at EFAP. They went over a stream, which was a reaction from Hassan to, I think, one of their streams. And he had almost no commentary. He left the room and left the stream play. So the quality of his content and the level of effort he puts into it isn't that high. So yeah, even though he earned his audience through various means, yeah, he has success. What's most questionable is his work ethic and the way he got that success. The fact that he's successful isn't a bad thing.
Your message, I'm pretty sure your community has a bone to pick with you. But other than that, that's basically my 2 cents.
Okay, we're gonna throw it over to CTV. Also, please do donate and sub to the channel so I can buy my own mansion. CTV.
Before I get into the rest of the stream, I will say that I watched a couple of minutes from this talk on Hassan's house, and yeah, CTV has a very energetic air about him, and yeah, he talks about the left, which applies a lot more to leftists than to the left in general. But yeah, he's part of circles which uses these terms interchangeably and with no reservations about how should I put this? Just using the term as like sort of a buzzword. That's the best way I can put it. So let's see a little bit into his take. He isn't the one I most disagree with. I'll highlight that at the point I'll make it.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest here, folks, right? The left, right? Left, right? Ha.
One thing I'll have to say is that until here, if you didn't know anything about what was going on, this almost sounded like a joke, like the left applaud, and I consider that amusing.
See? Is almost fucking always hypocritical. This is one of those key junctures where it's like, Brant, like I hear you, right? You don't want to get down on the guy that fucking works, right? Puts in the time to do, to fucking get where he's at, right? You don't want to get down on that. But the reality is that when you build your platform, right, like you said, on different values, there shows the inconsistency. So this is where like there's no reason in the fucking world, right, to not hold people to their fucking principles, right? So why is it that you think that it's much better for you to go buy a fucking mansion in West Hollywood, pay $3 fucking million for it, versus say like getting a fucking 20-acre spread out in the fucking woods, pay $150,000 for that motherfucker, right? And then be able to do much more with your fucking money and be able to facilitate more of the community that helped get you to where the fuck you're at. I mean,
he is right. The fact that Hassan bought his house in LA, in which it's more expensive than in many other parts of the countries, yeah, it shows his inconsistency. And yeah. That money could have both gotten him a very decent house, like much larger than he, I assume, has now, and still be allowing him to use his resources in order to further his political goals, like support other people and such. And that would have caused a lot less of a backlash.
like, you know what? Counterpoint's had a good point last week with going and getting the fucking old abandoned malls and building community around that. It'd be a great way to help solve homelessness. But you know what? No, we're just gonna go waste our fucking money in Hollywood, right? And then fuck everybody else. Be like, God, give me more money. Just give me more money. I need more. I need more, right? I'm not gonna do anything responsible with it except take care of me, right? And then leave everybody else with justifications like, oh, well, maybe he's using it to network with people or blah blah blah. No, that's just all a bunch of horse shit, right? And frankly, I don't even know how y'all are going to sit here and try to defend it tonight.
Amen, brother. We're gonna throw it over to
Are we
Heemed
going
now.
in order? Or is
Oh
it
yeah,
like,
we're going in order.
Okay, all right. I'm chill.
Send it over
Oh,
to
boy.
Heemed.
Love you, CTV.
Okay, so do I think Hassan's house is too big, and makes him a hypocrite?
I don't remember what he's about to say. yeah, it comes to the issue of not the fact that his house is big, but how he's allocating his resources in order to stay consistent. If he gets paid and he says that, well, I don't recall him ever saying that, but at the same time I don't follow him. But if his actions are supporting socialism by supporting me and I engage in practices which are more consistent with capitalism, then yes, there should be not necessarily outrage, but a lot of backlash about that.
Probably not. I did the virtual tour of his house. And you can catch that on my YouTube if you want. And honestly, I thought it was like a reasonable, like nice, very nice house. I didn't think it was like an extravagant fucking mansion or anything like that. But I'm more interested in if there's a limit to his indulgence in capitalism that would make him hypocritical.
Yeah, about this conversation, if I remember everyone's opening statements right outside of this, I didn't watch Kevin's all that well, and well, the last three I didn't. I just skimmed through to view them on the proper live stream. But yeah, this is the most interesting point being brought up, at least as far as I've seen. Like, what is too much wealth and too much disparity from the rest of the population to consider yourself as a good socialist? I don't know if they explore it because I didn't see past the openings other than a couple of minutes. But if they do, yeah, this is a great part of the debate.
Hypocritical. For example, like if he had a yacht or a private jet, are these things like not luxuries? Are they compatible with a socialist world? If Hassan or anyone who makes money from this kind of rhetoric, from the kind of rhetoric that he espouses, bought a private jet for their own leisure travel, would that be hypocritical? People might come back and compare it to like Bernie Sanders using a private jet for travel, but Bernie Sanders was on the campaign trail and he needed to fly quickly from place to place. So I don't think that's comparable. It seems that like a lot of people, when this news came out, were ultra quick to jump to his defense, and I find it quite odd. So I just implore these people to like test themselves by pushing it to the extreme of luxury with items like yachts to see if there's a line for them or not. I personally think that
I like this idea of pushing to the extreme the principle to see if it gains inconsistencies, because this is something which I apply as well. Like to see if an idea, principle remains consistent up until to a certain point. I want to see what caused the failure at that point, and if the idea itself is in some way subtly or not so subtly flawed or inconsistent with reality, in order to address that and change the policy or the principle which you hold in case you find the situation.
once people reach a level of comfort in their lives, they should and they advocate so heavily for a movement that there should be a leader for that movement, you know. And if you advocate for LGBTQ rights and you're Ellen DeGeneres, you should probably put your money towards LGBTQ causes. A lot of people like to shit on people like Destiny, for example, for various reasons, and I have my disagreements with him too. But the motherfucker believes in electoralism, and he put his money where his mouth is, and he went and campaigned door to door. If someone is poor, I understand having to sell out to capitalism to survive, but I personally think that there is some level of excess that even though I can admit Hassan's house doesn't reach that level, that there is a level. And I think that it would be interesting to have a discussion whether people think there is a level or no. Like, as long as he doesn't exploit people, he can have 10 private jets and it doesn't matter.
I do also want to say that I'm sorry I couldn't get Destiny from this. I'm sure he would have had amazing skills. The meth training is next level, honestly. Didn't expect.
All right, he's referencing the fact that recently Destiny had a stream scheduled with Marcolette, which that would have been quite a thing to watch, and I would have been eager to see how Marcolette is blown out. But Destiny took some bad meth, as far as I know, not his intention, and he couldn't be on that stream.
It. It's a new juke out for all of us. We're gonna throw it over to Straticus.
So my take on this is this is what you see from when the left get rich. When the left gets rich, this is exactly what you see.
To a certain degree, from what I've seen of Spartacus, he's little bit predictable. I'd say you at least I didn't see so far anything that surprised me from listening to him. His takes are quite common, I'd say, like at an expectable level. And something I could comment on this is the case of Bernie Sanders, who dropped his rallies, well, his chants against the millionaires and billionaires and switched to billionaires when he became a millionaire. And to many people, this is the same thing. It's happening to Hassan.
Hassan buys a $3 million house, and actually where he lives, the median house is worth $775,000. So his house is way above median. It's actually $2.25 million above median. If we're gonna talk about that, but you see Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders dogged on millionaires until he became a millionaire, and then he dogged on billionaires, and all time he's got 3 houses. This is what you see when the left gets rich. They don't keep their.
Yeah, I'm glad he mentioned the thing before me. As I said, I forgot about some of the things which happened in the intro, but yeah, let's get going.
Principles, and that's just how it happens. But to kind of end my opening statement, I demand a room in Hassan's house when I go to California.
Okay, that's funny. Yeah, it would be consistent with socialist principles that people who buy expensive properties would share them. Like if Hassan bought a mansion and he used it as service, like for hosting various other socialist content creators, like something like this Roundtable, except in his own house, because it has better equipment than various other socialist content creators, then yeah, a lot less people would have a problem with that. But something tells us that it's just for personal use.
Because socialism. That's my house too.
Wonderful. I'm gonna throw it over to Joe Lewis.
We're really at this stage talking about houses. I could give 2 fucks what Hassan does with his money.
Okay. In around these minutes, you'll see the reason I started this stream, because about Joe Lewis, I really don't like his style and the content of what he's saying at all. I've seen him before debate on CRT, and the guy marks me as absolutely disingenuous. Like when there is a point where he's in favor of, he has his research, of course, that's important, but as soon as the ball falls out of where it would advantage him, he begins to obfuscate, undermine the point, but in a way which comes up to me as very disingenuous on one hand, and he's also got this low energy, like this. I'm not comfortable to using the word doomer, but it seems kind of like this. Like he has an attitude of why should anyone care when it's something which isn't in his service. So it's a way of shutting the conversation from all together, and I do really find it disingenuous. It's not a good look for him, and I've seen him do this over time, and even in the rest of the debate you'll see, at least hopefully, that he does this. He obfuscates continuously.
Like, I don't understand why it's such a big rub in the bathtub, but maybe through this conversation we can find out more. This idea that the left.
I mean, you see from the way he talks, he's not interested, and he's not open to being interested in the subject. Like, I get to some extent that no debate is very likely to change most people's minds, and even if it's a roundtable of sorts, like, very little is changed from debates in the debaters. The audience can see which conducted itself better, and from that have a impression of how good the arguments for this or that side are, and the traps people are likely to fall into. But yeah, the presenters themselves very rarely will change to a significant degree, like maybe improve their tactics a little bit, but overall chances are that very few debates change the debaters' minds.
Left gets corrupted by money and the right doesn't is some fucking horse shit. Like,
okay, I'll play that again because I paused at the wrong moment, because that was incredibly bullshit, and he tried to pull on everyone, and I really hope that he doesn't know it's bullshit. But you'll maybe I shouldn't use these words, but anyway, this was awful.
we have a conversation what Hassan does with his money. Like, I don't understand why it's such a big rub in the bathtub, but maybe through this conversation we can find out more. This idea that the left gets corrupted by money and the right doesn't is some fucking horse shit.
It is disingenuous on several levels. One, he is the one who brought up the fact that the right hypothetically doesn't get corrupted with money. Nobody else brought it up before him. I don't know how he took this assumption. Like, maybe if he introduced it, that usually when he hears is this, but he didn't. He just stated that this is implied, and it's not. But on the second level of which is disingenuous is the fact that the right, as a rule of thumb, doesn't have any wing of itself, well, which is prominent, which advocates things like eat the rich or tax the billionaires, like progressively. Like, the richer you are, the more taxes you should pay. The right is against this. So comparing a right-wing millionaire or billionaire engaging in opulence with a left-wing one doing the exact same thing would mean that very likely the left-wing one is less principled, it's more hypocritical because of the nature of their ideology. The right doesn't have problems with with capitalism. Often they do have a problem with opulence, but I'm not sure that people who don't have a problem with opulence are that common. But the leftists, they do have a problem with capitalism and with very rich people. So bringing it up in the context of a leftist content creator, like a socialist, it's definitely relevant. And he tries to dismiss it. As I've said, this is one of the reasons I don't like Joe Louis.
Like, we have Republicans who don't give a shit about the plight of individuals in states like West Virginia all the way to Arizona. Like, you really think Floridians actually give a fuck?
Yeah, my position of avoiding swear words, it's kind of fruitless if the people on the panel are going to use them anyway without me, so I can predict when they'll say. But What is CTV doing? Like showing to the camera what he's drinking? Like he's done it twice already. It's really confusing.
About individuals at the political level, they don't give a shit. Like if it drives the money, it drives the money. So I don't understand why we are acting like this is just a leftist phenomena where when people expand slightly outside of their means, that like it's the same shit. Like you get let me know how you stay on your morals if you're a billionaire. Like I'd love to see how you advocate for your community, but statistically none of us are gonna get there. So like
His last sentence, yeah, most people aren't going to be billionaires. Some can get to millionaire status by saving up and being careful with their finances, but you can't get to billionaire status without making very good investments and being at the right spot to promote the right ideas and yeah, without investing. Yeah. Some might say without exploitation, but I'm not of that opinion. And what I was going with this, because Joe said something else which I wanted to bring up, but yeah, I'll skip it for now and see where the stream is going.
why should I just don't I wish I could give a fuck, but I could give the farthest of fucks.
Yeah, dismiss the conversation entirely, as I said earlier.
I mean, I guess we're going to argue about lefty versus righties and financial responsibility for an hour, but maybe we won't. Whatever. That's all I got for now.
Okay, I'm gonna throw it over to Kevin Gasly.
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. So I'm gonna start.
As I said at the beginning of the stream, my man Kevin, he's from all the people in this stream here, he's the one I most closely align with. I'm also a liberal hawk, so and his takes on economics are also good as far as I've seen so far. My disagreements with him are rather small or insignificant. There's a little bit about religion, but I could talk with him at some point in the future about it. But yeah, let's see Kevin's take.
Off by saying basically, you know, as it relates to the degree of hypocrisy, I'm going to say there is a little bit of hypocrisy there, and I can explain that position. But I do also want to say first off, just to the kind of the idea that this is a classic problem on the left. It's a thing that affects people with sort of moral framework across the board, though. And an example of this, a more prominent example, would actually be like Joel Osteen, for example, who's got a net worth of over $50 million. He's a conservative Christian. Is he living by what Jesus said to do? No, he's right wing. So it's a thing that happens on both sides where you'll have that sort of excess, which might seem to contradict your held values. Now, as far as it relates to the commodification of housing, buying a $3 million house definitely is partaking in that. Now, you would say, well, buying any house under capitalism is partaking in that.
Yeah, he brought up conservative Christians. It's yeah, he is right about this. Many prominent pastors aren't living according to the principles of the faith. I didn't bring it up before because this is more of an issue of contradiction with religious principles, not political principles. But yeah, I'm pretty sure there wouldn't be anyone who would disagree with the fact that there are rich conservative Christians which are not living according to the principles of the faith when it comes to money.
Hassan, obviously, he's somebody who is for basically a progression towards a socialist economy, and under a socialist economy, there wouldn't be commodification of housing. However, he would say probably, well, you know, we're under capitalism right now, so he's going to buy his house. And I'll say this, I'm with what Brant said on this. You know, he worked his ass off. It's not like he didn't earn it. He definitely earned it. The issue here, though, is just that he's somebody who's against the commodification of housing, even though he would say, well, we're not there yet. He would say right now, tax the rich more. It just taxed me more, except that's not really what he's saying, though. He's also worn shirts like eat the rich, going beyond just mere taxation, talking about a post-capitalist system. And the reality, I did about an hour-long premiere on my channel today talking about this, is that socialism historically hasn't produced public housing that's anywhere near the level of house that he's living in. But I also said, as far as $3 million for a house goes, I do feel like he got...
Yeah, when it comes to socialist housing, yeah, if you haven't seen the Eastern Bloc apartment towers, which are standardized and nowhere near the level of comfort, and yeah, he's referring to that.
Ripped off. I looked at the house. It's a nice house. Maybe 1.5 million or so. It really does go to how expensive West Hollywood is. If I had that kind of money, I wouldn't live in West Hollywood. So that's Hassan's personal choice. As far as it relates to the ultimate hypocrisy, it's a little bit hypocritical. I don't think it's ultimately that big a deal at the end of the day, though. But I do think that if you're somebody who's not just a social democrat, you're not just somebody who's, for, say, the Scandinavian type system, I do think that it is a little bit hypocritical to spend that much money on partaking in the commodification of housing. Additionally, considering that even though you can argue that the work that he does is some of the least exploitative work out there, the production processes that went into producing that house involved, from a Marxist analysis, the exploitation of the proletariat to produce surplus value. So in that sense, it was contributing towards exploitation just in terms of the products. But
Yeah, socialist, well, not Marxist principles does say that profit is theft, and yeah, I won't go into that why that's stupid at this point. And yes, according to Hassan's stated values, yeah, he shouldn't be engaging in what he does.
He needs a house, and it is an expensive area. I'll grant him that. It's just a matter of where that line is. And honestly, that line is more for people in his community to kind of decide at that point. I would say to some extent it does cross a personal moral line, but I also think it's ridiculous how expensive housing is in that area. So thank you.
Okay. Now I also want to say that if I do make the money, I will use it not to buy a house in Hollywood, but to build Castle Wolfenstein in West Virginia.
That is neat, man. Good for you, Dylan. That's super cool. I didn't watch enough of Dylan's content. He's a good moderator. I'll see about his takes on various issues as well. But yeah, that is something which would be interesting to see come to fruition. If you like the stream I'm reacting to right now, you could go to Dylan and support him and see if he actually does make Wolfenstein's castle when he becomes successful enough. That would be a tiny bit more than $3 million though, but yeah, it would be something which is worth seeing.
I'm gonna throw it over now to Trihex.
Yo. Well, first before I even start here, I want to say I'm very, very flattered to be here. Thanks again for the invite, Dylan. And I also want to give a special, I didn't get to, Dylan kind of pre-formatted my intro here by talking about fitness, but I want to say I'm very flattered to be here with you today, Vosh. First time actually hanging out and kicking with you, but...
For the camera, yeah. There's lights. Vosh got the vibe that, yeah, this is someone who he'll like. Let's see if that remains consistent and through the next of the debate when he might or not disagree with him.
Good to see you, man.
Oh, thank you. Likewise.
Yeah. So with that in mind here, my biggest issue with the whole discussion about is Hassan's house justified as a socialist advocate or self-described socialist, as people claim, I'm not sure which one it technically is here, is honestly the conflation over whether or not is it possible to own a house of that level of wealth while still being a socialist or advocating for socialism. And the problem here is I feel there's a big conflation between whether or not Hassan's merit of character is hypocritical for owning a house of this level of wealth, and whether or not can you even be a socialist if you own a house at this caliber of net worth. Can you legitimately own a nearly $3 million house and still be a socialist? It's kind of the question there. And I feel like these two things get conflated so hard in the fanboy wars between, hating Hassan and liking Hassan, that oftentimes I feel like a lot of people really lost the grasp over what even being socialist even means. And I feel like the fact that we couldn't get to that dialogue over Twitter was kind of like a huge problem.
Yeah, something I'll have to add to this is in any conversation, there are certain in any topic, there are certain things which are going to be brought up more often, and very frequently people get stuck in them, and the conversation almost never progresses past that. Like something private, like a stream show like this, might occasionally break through, but there are some topics which are going to surface more often, over and over again. Like what I said about Spartacus that or Spartacus, alright, anyway, that he comes off, to me at least, as a little bit predictable. Like, there are things I've heard from him which I agree with, but yeah, there are. The conversation is rarely going to progress past a certain point.
Now, with that, there are a couple points I would bring here. One, ultimately, my stance here is that like it's not hypocritical to own a house that wealth, own a house of that caliber, because I feel like when anyone's looking for a house, ultimately you're looking at it in terms of function. And well, there's one of the reasons why we'll start with function here. First thing is that like if you're a full-time streamer, the first cop out I usually hear is that well you can stream from anywhere. But in reality here, if you do stream from anywhere, you're often stuck to the slavery of the monopoly ISPs here. So I don't know how the internet coverage is in California, but I think a pretty compelling argument would be here that you want to be wherever the Verizon Fios is or wherever the fiber optic internet is, because you don't want to be slave to Time Warner or Comcast or whoever shit-ass internet is being provided in most of the areas here. You want to be where it is. And I heard that, generally speaking, that the fiber internet, the Google Fiber tier internet, if you will here, dependable internet, is only available like in the Hamptons and areas that are like really, really up there. Anyone in California probably can help me reiterate if I'm wrong on that or not. But also here, like some people, like Critical Thing veteran, for example, here are essentially opting to like backseat over how he spends his money. And it's interesting. I would hear like what I assume is a conservative argument here that like he's being hypocritical, but at the same time here, you're open to like backseating or front seating over how a private business owner would spend their money, which is really interesting in that context to me. Also subjective over his preferences too is kind of weird. Moving on though, like the specific case criteria for Hassan having the house, like whether it be him housing his family or trying to put maybe a production studio in one of the bedrooms, like a full blown one that would be like way more, I don't know, like pro streamer or pro production value than having his like personal bedroom be that.
This is almost the same thing I mentioned earlier with have his house be used for production of the content of other people. But yeah, Hex only brought up his own production here, but let's see if he goes into this.
I don't see the issue here with like if you can afford it, like why not? If the function is very strong there in terms of having an optimal location near an international airport while you already live in California where all the events happen anyway, as a full-time broadcaster that can possibly do.
There's something I saw in the chat. Someone mentioned socialism is evil unless everyone can agree upon it. It's as simple as that. It's a name with numbers and I think 833 rad. Yeah, socialism doesn't have the option, well, at least from what I've seen, well, it's Marxist sense of view that people would be free to engage in capitalism. Like everyone has to be socialist, otherwise it doesn't work. And to a certain extreme, what the chat said here is, yeah, it's what I've observed as well.
More film production studio at that point if he wants to. I just don't see here where like if he was expanding a team and building like a streamer house, how different it is to like have a streamer house for like an esports org and Hassan having his like production headquarters also be where he happens to live. So I just see a lot of function and like getting what you want, and I feel like anyone here who's going to put a 30-year mortgage down is going to definitely go for a very specific criteria of house, and Hassan been looking for a while, so I don't see it as insane. It's more reflective of how absolutely batshit insane the California market is comparatively. And of course, again, whenever people would say, okay, well, he shouldn't have got a $2.7 million, $2.7 million house. He could have got like a $1 million or like a 1.5 mil. Again, it goes back to this like rationalization of well, where's this arbitrary line between like where one can buy a house in California, but it can't be too extravagant. There's a very subjective line here over what extravagant really would be. And I can't really find I can't find anyone to like really pin that down to a definitive criteria other than what feels.
Oh, well, it's clearly 1,800,763,000. Well, and 418.74 cents. I mean, yeah, I have done this calculation by forgetting the number I just said. I think.
Like a rooted jealousy or envy over like I don't like Hassan here and I want a reason to not like him or whatever, just from what I observed so far here. And then finally, it's also really interesting too that some people also advocate here. It's my final point. Sorry, I'm getting a bit long here. Yeah, percent of wealth to charity, as well as like he must be completely transparent to validate advocating for socialism, or else he's like being hypocritical. I find that also really, really weird too, because like, okay, so now we have to have like to be socialist, you must be completely, or socialist advocate, you must be completely transparent or very, very transparent to a very insane degree in order to promote socialist things while existing in a capitalist society. I don't know. It seems kind of weird.
Okay, we're gonna
Anyways,
move
I yield.
it. Okay, we're gonna move it over to Vosh to wrap up the intros.
Yeah, so a few things. Yeah, I think this is dumb. I don't think it's hypocritical. I want to point out this isn't about defending Hassan. Dude's huge. He doesn't need defense. It's more about the general attitude because this type of argument is used against and within the left really, really often. First off, it kind of reminds me a little bit of that common discourse where a person will criticize the police and then another person will be like, well, good luck next time someone tries to murder you, as though there's some implicit hypocrisy behind the expression of like a broader critique of a system and also partaking in elements of that system.
He's talking about the police here, right? Because I think he skipped the word when he referenced what he's talking about.
Of course, you're not just partaking when you're Hassan. Dude's rich. No getting around that. But I honestly, God, just don't care, you know? He is rich. His stream made him rich. A stream where he advocates left-leaning positions. He got a lot of money doing that. I don't expect him to throw it all in a pit and burn it. Would it be nice if he was philanthropic with that money? Yeah, for sure. It's always nice when we do things that are good. We all engage in little excesses from time to time. And when you're richer, those excesses become far, far larger. The problem, like, on my end with this, is just that, like Trihex said, the line where you stop is completely arbitrary. Like, the implicit suggestion is that because of the way the system we live in works, if you become successful advocating for a political position, you'll probably become wealthy doing it.
Something Vinvaj doesn't mention here, and it's a little bit frustrating, is the fact that if your only advocacy for that stance makes you richer, but you don't translate that to other actions in the real world, then yes, that is hypocritical, and that is the subject of discussion. Like what Him brought up earlier is that Destiny advocates for electoralism, and he is living according to those principles. But we can't exactly say the same for Hassan. Everything that he seems to be doing is advocating for socialism to the benefit of him and him alone.
If you're a large streamer or YouTuber, you're going to accrue a lot of money doing those things. So the argument is that everyone can do this, but if you're left-leaning, there's an additional barrier you need to pass. You need to be philanthropic.
Not philanthropic, but not engaging capitalism for your benefit and not supporting socialism in other ways. It's not about philanthropy, it's about collective ownership like socialism claims to want. It's not capitalism for me, but socialism for the richer than me. Because there are there any socialists who consider themselves as part of the rich? I didn't see that.
Well, how philanthropic? Because depending on how good faith the people attacking you over this are, there might not be a line to that, you know? There are plenty of people in sort of the broader left community online who do donate money and do spend time doing this and direct action, and they still get these criticisms because they make more money than some of the people who criticize them from below. My argument here isn't that philanthropy isn't a good thing to do. It certainly is. It's just that this criticism foments an incredibly irresponsible attitude within the left. It essentially encourages everyone to form a circular firing squad, where anytime anybody becomes a little more successful than the people around them, they get dogpiled by those who are poor in their community.
I mean, it is easiest to make everyone equal by dragging the successful down than by lifting the unsuccessful up. It's like what happened in previous attempts at socialism. They didn't care about lifting the poor first. They first purged the successful.
Which is really weird. We should be happy when people who are left-leaning succeed, especially when they succeed because they're advocating for left-leaning positions. I can't imagine anything more
It's kind of weirdo because they're advocating to their audience. They're not spreading the principle. That is the main criticism being brought up here.
useful for our movement. Imagine if we had canceled Marx because his money came from Engels, a socialist factory owner. Is it nice to not own a factory in the traditional autocratic manner of business ownership? Sure, absolutely. But I'm glad Marx got to write what he wrote, and I'm glad that nobody was around to convince
Lame.
him that his labors were fruitless because they were stemming from some fundamentally hypocritical way of looking at the world or dealing with life. I hope Hassan gets another 3 million house out of LA, some other place, have fun with it. I just don't care because the attitude this ferments will always lead to pointless infighting. It doesn't actually produce any good results. Like, no utilitarian benefit is derived from it. Nothing actually changes. We just argue and accuse socialists of being worse than other people for not meeting standards defined by the non-socialists.
I think we are arguing about standards defined by socialists.
That nobody else has to meet. And
yeah, it's their principle. It's not someone else's job to follow their principles. It's their own. No wonder Hex is laughing.
We set the stage for, in the future, the same shit happening again. Sometimes justified, sometimes unjustified. If you want people to be philanthropic, this is not how you do it. So it seems to me it's more about the cancellation and the attacking people you didn't like beforehand than it is the trying to change behavior.
Okay.
Have you ever
So
heard?
Wait. Okay. There's Vosh was the last to talk.
Whether you've heard that phrase?
Sprouts and Sprout most likely.
I thought you were gonna ask.
Vosh.
Okay. Have you ever heard Vosh? Have you ever heard the phrase "actions speak louder than words"?
I don't like that he's having this attitude like he's making a point no one has heard before. But as you've seen earlier, I'll skip a couple of segments which seem to not be saying anything because I'm also running out of time. I said I only want to stream for tops 1 hour and a half, and it's almost been an hour.
Just a quick yes or no, whether you've heard that phrase or not.
I thought you were gonna ask him. Like,
Okay,
come on.
wait.
So actions speak louder than words is something I truly believe in. If you're gonna say something just because you're just gonna say it and you do the exact opposite, then I say you're hypocritical because you're not even willing to back up your own words. And house price is $775,000. We should do all these things and makes it. I'm saying it's hypocritical of him to do that. And that is why I'm coming against Hassan for that, is because
people left. That's an action I like to focus on.
Are not meeting up with his words.
Well, his action is he became one of the largest leftists online and moved hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people left. That's an action.
I mean, Vosh, you're kind of ignoring the criticism which is the topic of this conversation. I'm not sure exactly how you're doing that, other than promoting the ideology which you hold, but I think you should address the things which are being brought up to you.
Action I like to focus on. I don't give a fuck what he does with his money. As long as he's not spending it, paying bums to fight each other in some gladiatorial arena he builds in his basement.
I just feel like
wait,
we're
so-
mixing up
wait.
we're mixing up subjective and objectivism here. You can argue about how you feel about how somebody spends their money. Objectively, you could also argue that arguing on his behalf, you could say this guy spends a lot of money in taxes. He's probably a major pillar of his community stepping into that community. There's a lot of things that you could get involved in the objective point of view. Mixing in subjectivism and how you feel about how somebody is just basically backseat driving.
Rich, and he's like, actually, uppermost margin of 45%, something I'd be bothered by. If he was like, yeah, we should raise taxes, upper margin to 90%, and then he gets awful rich and he's like, actually, uppermost margin of 45% is enough, that I think it's totally okay to attack a person over that, because that's the position being changed.
Yeah, and I think most of the people criticizing Hassan are of that opinion.
Not like you're just wealthy, but saying the same stuff, which I'm okay with.
I feel like as far as it goes to the hypocrisy, though, it's worth flipping it, though, to say, if it was somebody like Joel Osteen, for example, who's a preacher who teaches the Bible, and obviously Jesus was like, you're better off abandoning all your wealth, otherwise you're not going to have a chance of making it to the kingdom of God. Yet he hoards $50 million. I think a lot of people that are kind of
tax-free.
I hate Joel Osteen. I think he's one of the biggest hypocrites.
There's money difference there. There's also a political difference there. All that I'm saying is that when I'm trying to figure out how I feel about these things, I usually try to say, well, what would be the reaction if it was a Christian conservative, for example? Anybody that's sort of professing a sort of moral worldview. And I know that Hassan's saying, well, you need systematic change, and he's just an individual actor. But for me personally, I've also, like in my life, decided against what I was originally going to go into. Originally, when I was younger, wanted to go into like loans and stuff, and then I got pilled on debt and realized like I don't feel comfortable pawning off debt on my compatriots, so I need to figure out a different career. You could say, well, there's somebody else who's going to do that job, but it's like I'd feel weird doing it if I'm doing a show that's anti the debt economy, So it's like at some point you do kind of have to live your values. And Hassan is somebody who's come out and said, basically eat the rich, that kind of stuff. You can debate over to what extent he's serious about that. I would just say, though, I've seen him have rhetoric before that's beyond simply taxation of the rich.
He's right about what he's saying. and I'm pretty consistent with it. And I think I'll let a couple more minutes go and then see what the next subject is about. Oh.
He does want to move towards a post-commodification of housing economy. Like, I'd feel a little weirded out doing that. Well,
Crap load in taxes. Subjectively would be mean saying, oh, he could go and he firm, or he could give 20,000 and putting a lot of time and effort in, has put in the work, claiming that they should be tax free. Yeah, most
Okay,
definitely.
I don't know why Joel Osteen and
By the way,
churches.
one second, one
Please.
second.
Okay, so I don't know why Joel Osteen and churches are being brought up, unless it's because it's a commonly known fact that I'm an ordained minister.
I don't think this stream is about you, dude, but they try to bring up an example of someone being hypocritical on the right, but as I said earlier, it's more of a problem with being hypocritical about religion, not about politics.
That's the only thing that he talks about. Let's help the poor, and he drives a fucking Lamborghini. The mistakes he's made. I am no fan of Joel Osteen.
Nobody else talks. Okay, that's my only warning for everybody. So, I'm gonna give it over to Heemed next.
Thank you. Okay, so I understand a lot of what Trihex and Vosh said. Trihex, you brought up some great points about like making sure you have the good internet connection and like being around near the airport. Completely understand that. But can you say that he needs to have a pool, or can we say that that's probably a luxury? And then I have more questions after.
What is it relevant?
Well, because the whole
we-
point is
we-
the reason that I bring this up is because, in my opinion, you in a socialist world,
Mhm.
probably everyone won't be having a pool. Like there's some things that are okay. So let me backtrack. Do you think there's a level of luxury for a socialist that can be hypocritical? Like if he owned yachts and he like like I just want to know if there's a line at all.
Is anti-wealth. I mean, so in a social society, you would definitely have like public affordable housing, and if you were successful enough economically, you'd be able to afford going above public affordable housing and getting like what we now know in USA as like nice houses in general.
Okay,
So like
but
whenever you wouldn't be stuck in like renter hell essentially. So like your question of like how many amenities are like overkill for a social society to me are not really relevant to the bigger picture of what socialism actually is.
It's kind of ironic because earlier I've said that these people seem to be the most aligned, and exactly on the point which I brought, they might be aligned on, or they're talking about the same conversation, but now they're diverging.
Oh, I completely agree. But this is the discussion topic we're having, right? Like, if we're talking about affordable housing, of course I'm going to agree with you. If we're talking about systemic change, of course. But the topic at hand is like, is Hassan a hypocrite, right? Like, I understand you guys are saying I don't care how he spends his money, and to be honest, I don't really care either. But the point of this discussion is he a hypocrite?
Counter your question with a question then.
Okay.
So whether or not the house is a pool or not, a pool would raise the property value of the house, and it'll retain more value than that. If you have like a chimney, if you have a guest house, if you have a pool, the more shit your house has, the better value it's going to retain on the appraisal. This is just like house buying 101.
Sure, of course.
Maybe I don't give a shit about the house or about the pool, but if the pool gives me more value, okay, fuck it, I'll get it.
Okay,
So,
so
I
then,
don't know if that's,
to clarify,
that bad? Does that make me not? Does that make me shop wise? Because I'm not a socialist anymore?
No. So just to clarify, you don't think there's any limit to the amount of wealth that someone can have while being a socialist?
As long as the wealth was accumulated without the exploitation, often synonymous with capital society practices and businesses. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. That's all I want to clear up. Okay, I disagree with that. Wait, sorry, I have one more thing.
I would love to hear you elaborate on that then. I'd love to hear like what
Yeah, I think that like you can't, in order to live in a socialist world, like a proper socialist society, you probably wouldn't have individual ownership of yachts, because in order to have that much of a discrepancy between wealth, where one person is able to afford a $20 million yacht, they must have exploited their way to get to the top. No one can get to the top to that excessive level.
I disagree with this. It's not necessarily that you get to high levels of wealth without I don't agree that you get to high levels of wealth only by exploiting it. You can get there by exploiting, and look at oligarchs. They didn't get there because they had good products which sold well, but because they made contracts and they had relationships with people in the government which gave them an edge, which made them oligarchs. But I kind of forgot the point. Sorry about this.
Level of wealth without exploiting people below them. That's what I think.
I don't think that luxury is.
Oh right, I want to say that the example given was the $20 million yacht, and if you're buying that, you very likely have at least double or triple that amount of wealth in order to afford it.
In and of itself objectionable. I mean, I don't like that'd be like saying that George Washington and the rest of the founding fathers were hypocrites for founding a liberal democracy because they were
it would be
servants of the crown.
subjective, would it not?
Yes,
Yeah, you couldn't hear Vosh very well, but he said that the founding fathers weren't hypocrites because they founded the liberal democracy when they were subjects to the crown. And yeah, I had to listen to that, and this is the last part of the stream which I listened to. And yeah, I'm leaving this point to be finished, and then I'll see what the second topic is.
Don't
do this.
Wait,
Fundamentally, I don't think there's anything wrong with enjoying luxuries that might not be available in a more equitable society. It's about what you do to achieve it and how you use that wealth and your privilege and what you do generally with your life. But the luxury itself in a bubble isn't really the thing that I find
What about when
problematic.
people
Okay, wait,
wait,
sorry.
wait,
Just
Yeah,
can
I'll
I-
get to elaborate either, but
no,
okay.
I gotta hand it over to CTV. He hasn't talked yet this topic, and he did raise his hand, so I want to throw it to CTV. He's just gonna have to grab it again in the future. Trust me, you have another chance.
Alright.
CTV.
Yeah, I think the luxury thing is more subjective than objective, but that's how I would view it. The reality of the present situation is that Hassan has built an entire platform on giving people hope inside the individual that would allow in the capitalist system. So then allow use to exploit.
It's possible to enter into a socialist society without the participation of capitalism to get there. Currently,
Can I just-
Use to exploit the people that donated to the cause, and to see the money get used in that way is simply just a slap in the face of the people that supported the streamer to begin with.
CTV,
can I just
do
say
you
one-
think that it's possible to enter into a socialist society without the participation of capitalism to get there? Currently,
Oh, disingenuous. It's. But I already brought this up several times in the stream. It's not about the fact that he engages in a capitalist system. It is about that he uses capitalism for his own benefit and asks for socialism, and he's getting support for being an energy socialist, but not applying these principles outside of a few words he said in his own benefit. How you're avoiding that completely really gives a bad taste to your take.
in the United States,
No.
then
But what happens
I
when
don't
people
know.
willingly give their money? What happens when
Yeah.
people willingly give their money to you? These people implicitly, through implicit contract, people are willingly giving their money to Hassan. They're
Okay.
choosing to support his platform. They're choosing to
wasn't the
take part
question,
in his content. But what I'm saying is there's
That wasn't
no
the question, though.
but there's no
Joe, what was your
abuse of the
question?
proletariat. There's no abuse of the proletariat.
Joe,
in
what was
that
your
people
question?
are providing
I'm
to
saying,
you.
Joe.
is it possible to not participate in capitalism to reach socialist goals? In
Oh,
the
you
United
could,
States?
you could
No,
have a
it's
revolution. You
not-
could have a revolution. Why not?
It's in this country, no, right? Unless you have a community that, say, you get a bunch of people that made their own hand tools, right, or produced their own fucking hand tools, went out into the woods and built an entire community based off of what was there on the land. Anything else is going to be them making contracts to bring lumber in or be able to. That's where the difference fucking comes in giving. So because of that, it's not forced on anybody. Which under a socialist governmental system, it would be forced, and that's where that's where the difference fucking comes in the conversation. Whether it's free or whether it's controlled, right? And in the system that is being preached through socialism, it is very much so taking from others and giving it to others, right? At the discretion of the government.
But we got to understand that individuals, we're not these like tried and true individuals of like the straight and narrow in terms of our advocacy for its policies. So then the follow-up question I would have is, what has Hassan articulated as it regards to housing? Oh Jesus Christ, that silence. This is gonna be fun.
Right. Who watches
But he has
Hassan?
said about landlords and whatnot, right?
It's already been said this panel, so I just don't understand why you're bothering to ask the question again.
The real
Vosh,
question.
Vosh, I know you were gonna. Vosh, I know you were gonna
I
speak.
think you said it, right? So why do
What?
that, Joe?
Wait, do what?
Why try to force someone to repeat themselves? They've already said it. The people want to see a show, right? They don't want to see the same shit get rehashed.
So wait,
Let's
but,
go.
but it's very important. Like, okay, so are we arguing about?
It's
Just
about
what are we
consumerism, not just
accomplishing either
housing.
way?
I'm just
Yeah,
saying.
Okay.
Can I just rehash it really quick?
Okay, rehash it, but and we'll probably.
To he's participating in basically what I call the remnants of socialism, which is taxation. He's paying taxes
Yes, someone said it. Taxation is socialism.
on it. He hasn't exploited any tax loopholes. He's probably very transparent in that. Does that mean he's not participating in capitalism? Giving their money to him?
No, because I know he wanted to jump in. I want Unreal work, okay? You know, loaded. Still say that some of
And I want to make the screen
deposits. It's
standard than everyone else. It just seems to be like an easy get because the consequence of what we're talking about right now is that socialists, when they're public advocates, will always be held to a much higher standard than every consequence doing so.
Wait, wait,
yes or no.
Okay, if it's a
Okay,
yes or no, then I'll let the latest
A hypocrite is
Necessarily.
Having fundamental
people's point.
So like
I'll write Joe down too. CTV. Okay, so I got.
so-
wait. I'm gonna go in order here. So we're gonna go CTV Sprout.
he just shoot a million group here. He's a little bit $2. The reality
Wait,
really
wait, wait.
oh, well, he was three chain. That's
Okay, can
so yourself
I can
gotta
see
this out.
I think so. When the
fun, but
As I've said, now I just skip to the next topic of discussion because this is the main conversation which I wanted to see happen. But I kind of ran out of time to talk about what I really wanted to talk about, which is in the next subject. So I'll just have to skip. If you want this muted, just say in the chat, and I'll mute while I skip.
then you ain't who has real. That's
Because
if
yeah,
you want-
Ironic.
His name down. After it's Kevin, Trihex, Brant, then CTV on the list. People
Right.
talking at
That's-
once, so I'm gonna let
Wait,
Sprout do
sorry.
it. Since, wait, I'm gonna let Sprout do it because Sprout
Okay,
was the person
okay.
who put forward the question. I'm gonna write CTV's name down. After it's Kevin, Trihex, Brant, then CTV on the list. So Sprout, finish up your line of questioning.
Okay, so the idea when I say it's hypocritical, it's because people tell
Liberty.
with the money.
People,
don't
okay,
think it's
agree with
impressive money.
has been hard and worked. My only issue, I guess, there was just about the profession of different values system in which
Right? Might take down downloading OBS, might take downloading Twitch Studio, and then you hit the start stream button, right? That's how easy streaming is.
different types of jobs in the economy and work hard at them without doing physical labor. I do find that sort of appeal to physical labor.
Of opinion involved. If I were to critique anything, that would be merely just me being a backseat driver trying to tell somebody what. Basically, it becomes a what I would have done with the money.
Future of a more progressive, a more developed
With the removal of a 20-year war. So thank goodness.
coalition forces that needed to get out, seize the capital.
It's going to make people talk. To me, it was an investment in PR because it's got us talking about him, and it's not going to change. Of opinion involved. If I were
Who's lower on the fucking tier?
Okay, somewhere around here is the next conversation, which is about the war in Afghanistan, which I have some stories for tomorrow. I'll have to sort them a little bit more, because, yeah, on the next edition of Bird's Eye View, I'm stuck on Afghanistan for a little while, at least.
Right? To like, oh, we got to protect this guy, so we got to protect the whole grift, and it's like, come on, like, why can't you just simply call out this fucker for what you?
in the world. But imagine how much stronger his messaging would be if he started a worker co-op that was successful in Los.
Question is in the intro to the next topic.
I yield the rest of my time.
Okay, now we're gonna throw it over to CTV, and for those who have been responded to, don't worry, you can. The last time you can respond to this question is in the intro to the next topic. CTV.
Yeah, I mean, we laid it out pretty clear, right? Hassan is a hypocrite, right? And I know about him. On the fucking right, he's on streaming right now, and they grip for this motherfucker.
I don't give a crap what Hassan does with. If I were to get the money, spend all your and what wait, controversy, an investment, and more power, rocking it. He's in my yard.
Now that, hey everybody, I am currently at about 41,000 or 41.5 thousand subscribers on YouTube. My goal is to get to 50K in the immediate future, and I would really appreciate if anybody could go to Dylan Burns TV on YouTube as we continue to push out about 2 videos per day. That's DYLAN TV. I'd really appreciate any support you could throw my way and just giving me a sub. It costs you nothing and it's a good way to support the channel. And
He's got good content. I watch your stuff basically every day. You guys should subscribe to Dylan Burns.
yeah, you're
Yeah.
calling
Also,
it out.
just to be sure, Vosh, when you went to the bathroom, you told Hassan upstairs to send the raid over here, right?
Yeah, we quickly knocked on the roof and gave him the message.
Okay. Good. It's good.
Wonderful. And if, of course, you don't subscribe, then Gulag, you know how it goes. Okay, we're going to go to the next topic, and it has to do with refugees from Afghanistan. The Taliban has taken over Afghanistan, and now there's a lot of refugees who want to flee the country due to their fear of the Taliban's brutality and repercussions.
As I said, I've covered this, and I might make this the only part of the stream which I keep on YouTube. I'll crop what I did and keep it like this. Hold up. So the second topic of discussion for the Hippy panel was the war on Afghanistan, and if the West should take in refugees from the area. Well, I'd say that there is a certain degree of responsibility because the failure, and especially the failure at the end of the occupation, was due to how it was executed, and many people are fleeing because of the West responsible. The West caused much of this crisis. If it had stayed there, then there wouldn't have been the total fall of Afghanistan to the Taliban. And if over the years the West would have had better policies like more troops there and more focus on nation building, because Afghanistan was at a period in time peaceful. So the allocation of resources could have gone to nation building much more than it did in our timeline, and the fact that it didn't, that's a failure. But moving on to today, the fact that the refugees are in the number that they are because of the retreat, I'd say that they need to be helped to get out of country, either to a neighboring country which isn't that hostile would be preferable, probably a Western ally. Then what is possible would be in Turkey, in Europe, and in America there would be fairly few which would reach. But there is a responsibility, especially for America, to take at least the people who contributed in the war effort, which are currently being in great danger if they are still alive. Oops, I paused the stream, the record.
There's already been reports of people going door to door and executions of TikTok comedians that were critical of them, police chiefs, etc. So the question to the room is, should we take in Afghan refugees? And if we do, how should that process go? And how many? So this time we're going to start in the bottom left-hand corner with Kevin Castley.
The person who is most likely to have the best response to this.
Thank you, Dylan. So yeah, just basically to intro this, in terms of my position on it and everything, I do just want to preface by saying, as Dylan alluded to, what's been going on and what's been allowed to happen unfolding in the wake of the official surrender, essentially, has been horrible. It's been disgraceful. The things that have been happening in Kabul, they're really bad. I'm not going to say exactly what's been going on there because I don't want to risk any sort of TOS stuff for Dylan or anything. You can look into that yourself. It's heinous. It's barbaric. It's the type of stuff that, can get streams taken down just for talking about the degree of the severity of what's been inflicted upon living and unliving bodies over in Afghanistan right now that the Taliban has been committing. It's absolutely horrible. The people of Kabul, the people of a lot of the more urbanized areas in Afghanistan, in the wake of the Taliban's blitzkrieg to seize the capital, as the United States had been drawing down troops from about 2,500 to around 300 in a very short period of time, what we saw was just absolute mayhem. And what we saw was that everybody who had their hopes tied in the future of a more progressive, a more developed country was just shot, and they found themselves now basically the property of the Taliban, and they rushed to Hamid Karzai airport to try to get out. And we've seen absolute tragedies of humanity unfold there, where people have been crushed to death, dozens crushed to death. We've seen terrorist acts that have killed people. We've seen just an absolute outpouring of support by a lot of people in the West that do want to take in the refugees, but it's been tied up by both the 3 months process between 3 to 4 months when Biden announced that he was going to be continuing Trump's surrender to when the Taliban actually went into Kabul. Biden had only gotten about 1,800 people or so in terms of their visas out.
Yeah, Biden got a very small number of people out in this time period. He's right about this. And I'm not sure if he'll bring it up, but usually when there are people responding to advocacy for asylum seekers, and when the advocacy is done by liberal hawks or by hawks in general, neocons, people are usually forgetting here that the hawk position is that with a properly executed intervention, with the nation building done properly, then there would be no refugees at all. People would prefer to live in their home country, where they are used to the culture and they're not forced to flee and abandon everything that they've built in the country, than be asylum seekers. This is obvious that they prefer their culture than being integrated in another one, or changing the other culture in order to accommodate them. So the first option would be properly executed intervention. if that's impossible, especially in a disgraceful retreat like this one. Like the amount of trust which is lost in the area is catastrophic. It's jaw-dropping. I think I forgot my point, but you get what I'm saying. First option, intervene properly. Second option, if there is no alternative and there are refugees, take the refugees which are supportive of the regime which would have been of the Western values. This is the order of operation. Let's see what Kevin has to add to what he said already.
When there were about 85,000 that had actually assisted the war effort all these years and worked with NGOs and worked with the Afghan government and worked with coalition forces that needed to get out.
Yeah, I mentioned as well the translators, people who helped the Western intervention, they should be given priority because, on one hand, because they help the Western powers, and on the other, because they are the highest in the priority list to be got by the Taliban because they have contradictory values. So they are in the greatest danger, so they should be prioritized.
And we're still at a point now with the Karzai airport where they're doing the papers, please memes, and they're just screening everybody to try to see if they're eligible for a flight. And this is even happening at the airport as these people are already...
Yeah, in this sense of the word, yeah, they should be first taken, and if there are any people posing problems, there can be a second level of trials after they got out of there, and in case there are problems, then those people who would be a threat domestically here once they're brought up be sent back. But you don't screen in a area of conflict to that degree which was done by the US in the current time frame.
Already inside the airport. At this point, if you're inside the airport, the Taliban knows you're there. If you leave on August 31st and there's still people left behind at the airport, those people are dead men walking, basically. Dead men and women and kids walking. That's a horrible fate. And we're going to do this because we can't process them outside at Qatar or Germany or any of these other places like the UAE. They all have to be processed and their papers checked and everything here. My policy on this as it relates to refugees is that because Joe Biden and Western leaders across the board at various points in time, in Canada it was 2014, in Australia and other countries it was along with the United States now because the US is the leader in that regard. All pulling out, the least that we can do is take in as many refugees as want to get out as possible because we owe it to them for abandoning their country to the Taliban, and they helped us. 65,000 doesn't mean that they didn't fight. 65,000 ANA guys and women lost their lives fighting the Taliban over 20 years. The least that we can do is take in the survivors that want to get out, that stand with us and share our values and everything and despise the Taliban. These people are not terrorists, as a lot of groypers will try to claim and fear bait over. And if the United States or Joe Biden wants to go blue tie groyper, blue hat groyper, and say, no, we only want 30,000, not our problem, then I think that Canada or other countries should take in Afghan refugees, as many as possible. So
okay, we're going to move on to Trihex.
Oh, thank you. I mean, so if there's the appropriate amount of vetting, I can't actually imagine why there would be a vehement general opposition to allowing refugees from Afghanistan, based on humanitarian rights and whatnot. To me, there's like plenty of reasons to say yes here. Yes, economically, the country benefits from having immigration coming towards the country means that we have a surplus of workers who are able to like do whatever they want here. So if you're on an economic pro economy of America, you're in for it. Yes, morally because we wanted to get out of there because it's like it's a shit show to say the least here, obviously with a bunch of stuff going on there. And then ultimately, hey, we're a country, traditionalism here a little bit here, but yeah, we're a country built on integration anyway. So I don't see why you would allow this in World War II, but you wouldn't allow it now. Again, under the pretext here that we'll be able to like fish out any bad apples or bad oranges with the appropriate amount of vetting involved here, which I think we already do anyway. And I only thing I can see here as far as like an opposition would be like a rooted fear of like inside agents. But other than which, again, I don't necessarily even see that either here. So I'm pretty curious here of like what the argument would be against that. Seems like a pretty easy yes to me on again economically, morally, and it's what we already do, given we vet anyway. Pretty simple answer.
Okay, now we're throwing over to Vosh.
Yeah. We have a pretty stringent and effective vetting process. We should bring over as many as we reasonably can, and then maybe a few more. Oftentimes, we think of immigration and taking in refugees and asylum seekers exclusively as a matter of personal self interest, but we fucked over their country. I do not think that our assistance in this regard should be limited purely to what is most convenient for us. I think that we have a moral obligation as a country to do everything we can to compensate for the destruction we have levied upon that country and its people. And I want to thank, as unfortunately, and maybe inevitably tragic, as our pullout from Kabul was, the Chad Biden for with his big balls doing what Trump talked about but never actually could do.
Come on, dude. I was going to say that with one exception, Vosh almost sounded hawkish in this situation, but no, no. Plus, yeah, I'm not going to go into Trump's actions about this. Even though his plan would have been less catastrophic, because he wouldn't have allowed the Taliban to organize. But yeah, it doesn't matter. You don't get to call Biden Chad about the situation in any way, shape, or form. It was disgraceful.
Which is actually pulling us out of Afghanistan. Wouldn't have expected it from him. Didn't think he had it in him. But you know, that's good old Steely Joe coming in hot with the removal of a 20-year war. So thank goodness for that.
Okay. Now we're gonna throw it over to Joe Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, even if we accepted the eight, like kind of where this thought in a way that makes sense, because some people have no idea what I'm talking about. Even if we accept the 20,000 that are currently in the pipeline under the SIV, and then the additional 70,000 after that, we'd still rank. I think it's like fourth for total group of individuals accepting Afghan refugees. I mean, in 2020, we ranked like 21 countries were ahead of us. We were in the 1000s in that. Comparatively, like you look at Pakistan and Iran, where a lot of these individuals will be traveling by foot, especially in 2020. That's where they ended up. So I think it doesn't seem too far-fetched to say that we should probably, under the SIV, make sure that people who worked with the United States make it out of Afghanistan. Because it's very clear that once we pull the people that we need to get pulled out, we're just going to kind of wipe our hands clean, which, I mean, I was watching a debate with Kevin. He wants to put some boots on the ground, so maybe we'll get there. But yeah, I think all in all, we have the ability to bring these people in. And also, we got to remember that a vast majority of them, if not an overwhelming majority, will never make it to the West. So whatever number we bring in is going to be significantly higher than what we brought in the past. So I say, like, let's just.
Despite my disagreement with him earlier in the stream, this is a fairly decent take. I didn't document myself on how many, on what place would the US have been. And yeah, 4 seems reasonable if they took, and the number was 20,000 plus 70,000. Yeah. But I've also said earlier that the most amount of refugees would be closest than Turkey, then Europe, then the US, except if the US it says it's best to take responsibility for the situation and take more than it would be in principle supposed to, based on proximity.
Fucking ball.
Okay, I want to give a breaking news update actually on Afghanistan right now. Biden has just retaliated for the Kabul airstrike explosion committed by the Islamic State with a drone strike against Islamic State members believed to be involved in the planning of those attacks in Kabul. The strike, I believe, so far, as far as I can see, has only killed one person, which was the person who was involved in the planning, with no civilian casualties. Just wanted to give that update. Now we're going to throw it over to Heamed Out.
All right. Okay, this one is really emotional for me. I'm from Iran. I speak Persian. All of these videos of these Afghan people crying for help, I can understand them in my native tongue. To the people of Afghanistan, I want to say خواهرها برادرها اگر که بتونیم بیاین کانادا ما در کشورمون رو براتون باز میکنیم و معذرت میخوام برای این اتفاقی که افتاده. And I just want to say that
that could have been only some message of support and hope, but I have no idea what he said. If there was anyone in the Hippy chat or in mine who understands what was said, I'd be interested in hearing. And yeah, of course, the people who are in the situation should get all the support possible, and the messages like this. Hopefully the public opinion is swayed enough in order to allow for as many refugees to not be persecuted by the Taliban.
That like as a Canadian, it's disgusting to me that we've only committed to accepting 20,000 refugees, especially when, in my opinion, most of Canada's problems come down to having a disgustingly pathetic small population that's spread out insanely. We have the fourth smallest population density in any landmass in the world.
I mean, you are of North, right? Like, hold up. Hello, the converted man. I'm not sure about the volume. Is it too low on the stream? Too low on mine? Is it now okay? Okay, let me search because he brought it up. Let me see. Population density by country. Audio needs to be louder. Well, I can't exactly do it. It's in the yellow on OBS, so low to stream for my side. Okay, let me see a little bit more on the stream.
And the fact that we're only able to bring in 20,000 is absolutely disgusting. Now, I want to say that while I'm happy that the war is coming to a close, I wish that it could have been handled a little bit.
Like, I'm as loud as the stream from what I see. And yeah, I realize that it is static. I hope it doesn't take away too much from it. I have to be... Yeah, I also have it at maximum for the stream. Or my OBS. I have to get a new mic, but currently I don't have the means to. I've seen something decent, and the mics is always the problem with too low volume, at least from my experience. I'll have to see, but yeah, I can't buy a new mic right now. If there is anyone who wants to support, let's see. List of countries and dependencies by population density. He said that Canada is the fourth last. Let's see, population area. Okay, density. Canada in this map is 10th. There is the Falkland Islands, some territory in Norway, Greenland, Western Sahara, Mongolia, Iceland, Australia, French Guiana, Namibia, and then Canada. Let's see Russia. Russia is 20. Okay, yeah. It's also similarly north, and yeah, it's usually desert countries, either ice desert or sand deserts. Yeah, I'm not sure how many people you can bring in Canada, and but yeah, 20,000 is a small degree of refugees there. Okay, anyway, back to foreign policy stuff, lol. Okay, back to the stream.
Better. It's no secret that the Taliban was going to take over the whatever the remains of Afghanistan were. I only wish that like there was a way that before the forces pulled out, they would have gone door to door and said, "Hey, listen, do you want to leave this country? Because if you choose to stay, the Taliban are going to."
Okay, about the chat. Okay, so if you want to bring in more people to the country, I think you should have to rent out a room to have someone. The beginning of the stream was about Hassan Piker's new house, and in there was the talking point that if you want to have socialism, then share a house. Okay, let's get back to the stream.
Be in charge. Whoever wants to come through. Whoever wants to stay. I will say that like it's disappointing that other countries in the region have such ethno-state vibes. For example, Iran hates Afghans. You believe it or not, though they speak the same language, Iranian people have just as much of a hatred towards Afghan refugees as the most conservative person that you've ever seen, and that's really disappointing. In the region, there's a lot of animosity from within these countries towards each other.
Yeah, I mean, even yeah, in the region there are nationalist vibes. The story I can remember and talk about this now is to I hope it doesn't come off as too ignorant, but even to a certain degree, the Ottoman Empire had this. Yeah, of course, it had to eventually have a multi-ethnic composition, but in expansions of Islam, there are a significant number of voices which are ethno-nationalist. Of course, Islam people there can be of any origin, but yeah, it's not surprising that the region is ethno-nationalist to a large degree, moving away from ethno-nationalism and even what was the word? Not exactly xenophilia, but preference of the outsider is mainly a Europe thing, and yeah, it's more of a Western idea. Most of the world is ethno-nationalist to a larger degree than the West. Okay, knock knock, military dude. Hi, we have. We're going to GTA full of here. Want to come? It wasn't like this at all. They just fled military first, and anyone else. Maybe you get on a train and you fall. Well, no, on a plane and you fall off. Let's see. A person that opened door. No, I want to stay here when the Taliban takes over and risk my life. What? Of course you take me out of here. Yeah. Well, you've seen footage from the Kabul airport where people run after the plane to get on it, and yeah, there is a lot of desperation there.
It's really heartbreaking, and I don't know what else to say. I wish that there was something that we could have done. So I do think we should accept as many refugees as possible, and it's shit.
Okay, now I'm gonna throw it over to Sprout.
So I think that we should take any SIV holders, any people that have helped us in the war. They should come first. They should get the first ride over to America, considering they helped us during the war. I think after that we can look at the communities that are going to be affected by Taliban rule over ISIS. We can look at those communities and start vetting through those communities. Anyone that gets vetted through can come over, and then the landmass as a whole. I think that's the order it should go in. We should take as many Afghans as we can over here, as logistically possible, and I don't have those stats, so that would be something that that Biden staff would have to figure out the exact number of how many Afghans we could hold realistically. But other than that, that's how this. I think that's how we should get Afghans over here. On the same hand, I do think that Biden should resign for how he's handled this whole situation.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree in the terms of what the Biden administration did was lackluster, and I keep using the word disgraceful. Yeah, it should have been handled significantly better.
And if you want to see a discussion with me and Sprout on the idea of Biden should resign, that should be uploaded at some point next week.
Yeah, as the chat said, Biden is less than useless. Also, there was a thing that in his campaign, depending on who was asking questions, he would answer in order to basically get the agreement of the person asking the questions. He didn't have a strong principled side. He only got support because he wasn't Trump and he was in the Obama cabinet. And that isn't enough because it leads to things like this. Thanks, The Convert Man, for commenting.
Now we're going to throw it over to CTV.
Well, guess I'm going to be the asshole in the room on this one.
Ooh, isn't this interesting? I wonder if Kevin will have a problem with what he's saying.
Anybody that's done any kind of real study on Afghanistan would know that for a large, pretty much all of its history, as a matter of fact, right, it's been an area of contention in the Middle East. It just has been. And Dr. Heemdad is exactly right whenever he says that there's a lot of ethno-state vibes over there. As a matter of fact, the original lines that were drew up for Afghanistan were done so by the British back, I think it was back during the 18th century, right? The 1800s right there. So, like, this arbitrary line is how Britain decided that they were going to come up with this border, right, without understanding that, you know, like the peoples on the eastern side of Afghanistan and the peoples on the western side of Pakistan, right, actually have, like, everything in common, because that's actually how the ethnicity breaks down there.
As I mentioned on the previous Bird's Eye View stream, that yeah, there is a contested region in Pakistan by Afghanistan. So Pakistan is gaining a strategic interest by not having a stable Afghanistan, because they would, in their stable form, attempt to gain control over that region in Pakistan, which is exactly what CTV is saying here. So yeah, most of the time when the colonial rule ended, the lines of the countries were poorly drawn. So yeah, I don't think anyone defends that. Everyone sees that as a poor organization.
As far as the border is concerned. So, like, moving, if the goal was never to try to do any type of nation building and to run off the Taliban because it allowed for the centralization of terrorist organization activity to be able to perpetuate in Afghanistan.
I mean, there is security interest which is domestic and abroad, and in this kind of situation, it was abroad. Keeping a stable Afghanistan would be beneficial to the West, because now it is very likely to be used as the base for various extremist groups in the area, because the Taliban has control and they are an extremist group themselves. So yes, this is a hit to national security of various parts of the West.
Right, pulling out the way that we did only allowed that terror cell to be able to be reinstilled right there in that area of contention. Now, this is where if there would have been if there would have been like any statecraft, right, any statesman in office versus politicians, and there hasn't been, I would argue, for probably at least a good 100 years, right? We would end up getting into a situation where we wouldn't want entangling alliances, and if we were going to have our troops stationed in other parts of the world, that land would need to be a state of the United States, frankly. So, as far as accepting Afghan refugees, I think the people that worked specifically with us while we were there obviously felt like that they were working towards a goal, and they should, and that goal and things that were said should be honored. We should definitely be keeping our words in that regard. But with the entire ideology of the left, seemingly always open borders, they don't want to do anything about the crisis, and I mean the crisis that we're having at the southern border.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that he went into this, but really, as far as I've seen on a large scale, I didn't see all this much of this advocacy for open borders. Most of it I found it through the internet. Yeah, at least America, I know it has a much larger problem with not caring at all about what happens in the southern border, and not seeing as legitimate restricting immigration there and immigration from there. And yeah, I think this is a mistake in several levels. Yeah, there should be a stabilization of Mexico as well, because you don't emigrate in the numbers in which Mexicans want to do, with your country being a great place to live in. So yeah, more efforts should be made into making sure that Mexico is a livable place when it comes to America. Not just restricting immigration itself, which is a good thing to work to, but it's not the thing which will solve the issue.
Right, with people just flooding into the country, why wouldn't they just say, oh yeah, margaritas for fucking everybody, let's all come in, right? And not give a fuck about like the actual systems that are in place, about how our government is structured, and like getting people to come in through the processes at a pace where our government can actually keep up. And then they would just say, oh, well, let's just spend more money and hire more people. It's like, all you're doing is throwing money at the problem instead of trying to address some of the real things that we need to as far as the philosophy of the nation is concerned. So again, this is going to be one of those topics where the left just doesn't know what to fucking do. And they're just like, default answer, sure, it's going to be best for me to say, just accept everybody. So that's what I'm going to say so that I can be liked by the most amount of people and grift my way to the top to get to a fucking Hassan $3 million mansion.
Margaritas for Afghan refugees. We're gonna throw it over to.
Yeah, margaritas for refugees. that is a policy which I didn't expect to find today. Well, even if it was said in jest.
Brett, now I gotta use the bathroom. I'll be right back.
So one silver lining of this issue is it has been a uniting point.
The mods are gone. Quick post bannable things in main. Well, don't, but still. You'd get a normal margarita. Okay.
for the right and the left because this is not a right or a left issue. This is a humanitarian issue. This is something that America as a whole got itself into. And I mean, I'm not trying to just shit on you here, Vosh, but I can't believe you used the word Chad and Biden in the same sentence.
Nice. That's a good criticism. I couldn't let it slide as well. Good for Brent for doing it as well. I'm glad on that. And did you see the look on Vosh's face when he mentioned, oh wait, who, me? What are you going to talk with me about? But yes, this is a good criticism of what Vosh said, and now he's laughing. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, you don't use Chad and Biden in the same sentence, especially given his track record since the presidency started.
The guy strategically blundered the pullout, basically turned the lights out at Bagram Airport.
What is it if you doing, man? Like, I said earlier in the stream, he's showing dreams to the camera. I have no idea why. Maybe it's a thing on his channel. Now he's vaping in the camera. It's, I mean, it gets a little bit of attention on him, but it's just distracting.
And basically left people to fend for themselves until it became a media blunder for his administration, for which he's now been forced, with the candle being in the room now, to have to do what's right. I'm all for vetting and you know, helping the people out that are SIVs, women and children, to be able to get out of there, offering democracy to people, allowing them to come over here and achieve the American dream, have a fair shake at life, be able to learn how to read, be able to learn how to drive a car, not have to be subjected to extreme fundamentalism. And I can't believe that you said Biden was a Chad there. That's absolutely, I think that's like basically like an insult to people that lives were taken because of the fact that he basically let that, you know, the people that lost their lives tragically yesterday. And I just want to say rest in peace to the 12 servicemen and the 13th Navy medic that were out there that lost their lives, and all of the Afghan nationals that lost their lives as well. Rest in peace. Know that our hearts are with you, and that the majority of the American people do not stand for the politicization of that war. And I'm very much for vetting and getting as many people over here, putting, like I said, women and children to the top of the list, the people that have the most to lose in this situation. The people that have lost the most in this situation, have the most freedoms to lose in this situation. It's not a right or a left issue. This is a humanitarian issue, and everybody should be for the perpetuation of democracy and allowing a branch of, you know, an olive branch of peace for people to be able to come over here and to economically assimilate and be the person that they wanted to be, that they were supposed to be and chosen to be. And I just, like I said, I can't get behind the whole Biden being a Chad thing. I think a lot of this fundamentally rests on his shoulders. We shouldn't have pulled out there till we knew that we had the people that did not want to be there out of there and gave them every opportunity under the sun. If that meant holding Bagram and maybe other airstrips as well so that we could safely get people out, then we should have done that. But Biden did not do well on this. And there's a reason why everybody can unite on that particular subject.
Yeah, Biden's approval went down at least 12 to 15%, if I remember correctly. It was a severe blow. Everyone is saying that the exit should have been handled better. And yeah, there is more support for hawkish policies because more people were exposed to the fact that this is what happened when you stop intervention before it is ready. And something else I have to add is that yeah, Brent is for the first time on this on the Hippy panel, and yeah, he's making a very good impression, at least on me. I think I'll see him and support him afterwards, see if he's got other good takes on other subjects. I like his responses, at least in this area. In the Hassan segment from earlier, it meant less what was going on. But yeah, congratulations to Brent to making his case well so far. And let's see what my chat is saying. The converted man says, I've seen people still blame Trump for the withdrawal. Yeah, Biden has no responsibility. He's like a puppet. Like, he's echoing the actions of Trump. Like he can't make any decision, man. Come on, man. You want him to have a principled stance and just change also this policy from time? No way. That's not his cup, Jack.
And like I said, of course we should be accepting people in. Of course we should. We should be giving every opportunity. We take in 1 million legal immigrants a year. Why can't we take in 50, 70, maybe even 100,000 in the first year if they are vetted correctly?
Like, replace some of the immigrants which would be normally getting in the country with Afghan refugees. That would be a good policy. I mean, my position on immigration is that for the past 30 years the US has been taking way more than it should have been. But yeah, with this situation, cut some of the immigration from other places, allow these immigrants to get in. It should be a pretty clear-cut issue. And if the immigration remains cut for the next years, then perfect, because as I've said, for decades it's been too long, at least in my opinion.
I mean, why couldn't we do that? Why couldn't we make that happen? I'm all for economic prosperity. And I mean that's my stance on the subject.
So I gotta give.
Okay,
I gotta
well-
give. Oh, sorry.
I just want to say for everybody at home that unless somebody will tell you if they're an expert on the issue, but you should assume that nobody talking today on any issues is an expert on the issue unless they say otherwise. I also want to give my own special tip on this. A good thing to start when doing research in Afghanistan would be to read the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction report. That's what we need to learn. Lessons from 20 years of Afghanistan reconstruction. There's a 160-page PDF. You don't need to read that, though. A lot of it is summarized in the overview. That is, I think, a good place to start if you wanted to learn about the Afghanistan war and what is universally agreed upon to be things that definitely will.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. So as I've said, I was only planning to streaming 1.5 hours today. It's been a little bit over that. I'll rewind to what Dylan was saying to see which report was he talking about, and I'll put in the chat in the description. And I think we're ending the stream here for today. Sorry, I've done so little on the Hassan, so much on the Hassan segment, and so little on this one, which was more important. But live and learn. Yeah, the converted man. I'm not streaming tonight. I'll be invited to Harry and Gladiv's channel to make an episode of Laughing at the Guardian. So I decided to stream earlier today, just spontaneously when I was seeing this panel. Yeah, so I'll rewind, see which document Dylan was talking about, then I'll close the stream. So anyone watching, those for my creation now, and we're ending soon. So
Went wrong. A lot of general day on any issues is an expert on the issue unless they say otherwise. I also want to give my own special tip on this. A good thing to start when doing research in Afghanistan would be to read the Special Inspector General for Afghanistan Reconstruction report. That's what we need to learn. Lessons.
okay, so Special Inspector General Report Afghanistan. Okay, reconstruction report, yeah. Found the link, put in chat. This is it. I'll also put it in the description. All right, thank you everyone for watching, and yeah, let me close this, and I will see you in the next one.